Do we have Tanya now?
Can you explain to the people why you're offline and why you canceled the agenda, first agenda?
You're out of order.
Not out of order. I'm just asking if people online
Okay.
can't hear what's going on, then it needs to be revised of what's going on. I mean, the people are trying to log in and they can't hear what's going on. They don't know that our agenda was canceled because I won't sign a corrupt paper.
We know now.
Melanie, are we ready to go?
We are good to go.
Okay, let me call on Tanya. Can you hear me?
I won't download it.
Yes, I could always hear you online and the online people could hear me. The issue is you couldn't hear me. So thank you, Mayor, Council and Administrator Curry. I'll try to make this short because I know we're running a little behind. For the first time since January, the United States has had an uptick in COVID hospitalizations. That was just released a little while ago today. We've also seen 3 indicators that there may be some uptick. And when I say uptick, I don't mean like January of this year, beginning of Omicron, Delta waves. Uptick is, 10%. We've now got a little over 7,000 people in the hospital nationwide. But a little bit of uptick in hospital visits for COVID-related cases nationwide. Increased case positivity and wastewater is going up in a lot of the areas. So it's still really reasonable for people who are at high risk. If you're in a crowded indoor area, you may want to be masking. If you have not gotten your second booster of the bivalent, you can still get that. That will be available, it looks like, until September. September is when we should start rolling out the monovalent XBB, which the village most likely will not be giving. In New Mexico, we do have an increased number of people hospitalized, but it's only 26, which is way below the 50 when at the beginning of last year when we started reopening everything fully. We're running 50 to 60. We do still have vaccines available. If people need to get a vaccine, they can register online. One of the easiest ways is just to reach out to me, and I've been working around people's schedules to get that done. And I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? Yes, Councilor Knight.
Thank you, Mayor. So Tanya, you said you didn't think that the village will be providing the new shots come September?
Thank you for that question, Councilor Knight. No, because it's going commercial. Right now, the government pays for all the vaccines that go out. Providers can charge a small fee, which we do not charge. We do not charge a fee for administration, but it's going commercial. I am working with the Department of Health in the state of New Mexico, hoping that some of these states, low income and free vaccine could come our way. I am going to try to do at least 1 or 2 drive-through events with commercial pharmacies if I can get them on board when that fall booster does come out. But since it's going commercial, we would have to pay for the vaccines. So that's the reason.
Okay, thank you.
We're not set up to do the billing.
Right, okay.
Any other questions? Tanya, thank you very much.
Next thing I want to mention to you, and you look in the website and the mayor's message coming up this Friday. There's going to be some road closures around Corrales Elementary. There's some piping that's going to be laid down and corrected. So the exact locations we'll be able to put those on the website. It'll be around Corrales Elementary, but we'll always have 1 lane open for the road, but just be prepared for that. It should come sometime next week. There's a lot of different entities involved, including the highway department. So I can't give you any more definitive information than that, but just be aware that it's going to pop up and people will be slowed.
So, excuse me, Ron,
Oh, yes, sorry.
is that, did you say piping? Is that for like wastewater?
This is piping for the fire suppression system.
Right,
Oh, okay,
They're hooking into the school.
right.
okay, thank you.
And Anthony and Michael Chavez are both working to get, it's been flagged out, but as to where the locations are going to be, but we're waiting for some final designations before we, hopefully we'll have them for the mayor's message so he can post them in there on Friday.
Thank you.
Either there or a link to the website so they can see what parts are going to be closed. Yeah, this is going to be a hookup to the tower in the back of the school. So they'll give us access to Andrews Lane and ultimately, water to the Bosque.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
And then,
Oh, I'm sorry.
that's all right. Then one other thing, two other things, actually, if you go to the website, Melody's made some corrections because we've had some people say it's hard to get to the Zoom link for these meetings, for the council meetings. And so if you go to our website that she updated this afternoon, you'll see council meeting Zoom link just right there on the front page, so you don't have to dig around for it. And so you'll see it in the lower left-hand corner there, so you don't have to go to 2 or 3 different pages to get there. So hopefully they'll make it easier for folks to get there. And then the last thing I want to report is that I had a conversation last week with the title company. Had a conversation with Alan Gonzalez, and we're in a much more positive position today than we were 2 weeks ago. Everybody has signed at this point.
Oh,
And so we're at a point where the title company is doing some hopefully very marginal cleanup. And so Alan is happy, and hopefully by the next meeting, we'll have even more positive news. But due to the way this has rolled throughout the whole course of it, it was just a little over a year ago, hasn't it been, Melanie, that we first started talking about this as far as having an offer that we put out there. And it certainly started way back in Mayor Roke's administration. And so, forgive me for using a football analogy, that we're probably down to the 5-yard line at this point. For
Hopefully
those
no
of you who don't
penalties
like
from that
football
one.
analogies, forgive me.
I like to be closer than 5. Yes, Councilor Wallman.
Ron,
Raise your hand. Yeah.
yeah, I was wondering if we have any updates on the 2 proposals on the administrative parking lot. The 2 groups were going to be meeting. It was a couple of months ago. Do we know if there's been any meetings?
Amy Bell is modifying the parking lot
Yeah,
based on the information they provided with what we can do.
they were going to sit down and do that.
Still to qualify for our site,
Yep.
without having to do a new site development plan.
Amy has taken the lead on that, and there have been some conversations.
If that's, thank you.
Yes, Councilor Murray.
Well, thank you, Mayor, Councilor. So, looking at the drone footage, is there plans at all to put solar on top of the roof at all? Any thoughts about it?
Actually, I'm not aware of any plans. We haven't put any money aside for that, but that's an excellent idea, and we've talked about it, but we don't have any plans for that.
Okay. And I noticed when you put the new website up, that has the Verizon issue been resolved? I mean, that was on the website for a long time.
Melanie, you want to speak to
I
that?
believe so. I believe
Okay.
it's better.
Okay. And I think Councilor Roldman just answered my question that I had about the Main Street report, so I'm good.
Good. You're done. Okay, this Councilors Forum. This section is for informational purposes only, not for discussion or debate, to inform the governing body of an issue or concern that would not be addressed on the agenda during the business session. Who wants to start out? Does anybody? Councilor Murray.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. So this past week, I had 2 meetings. One with the Water Resources Board, which is a subset of the Mr. Cog facility. And it was an interesting presentation that we had by a gentleman by the name of Andrew Erdman. He's with the Interstate Stream Commission. He gave an excellent presentation about the water resources along the Middle Rio Grande Valley. But I'm going to paraphrase him here, because when he first started this off, he said Senator Munoz and Cervantes had a message for the Middle Rio Grande. Basically, they're coming after our water. There was a Senate Bill 337 that was passed this past legislative session, and it sets up the Interstate Stream Commission to develop rules and so forth. So the big problem I understand is that they only monitor the water in two spots, one up by Los Alamos at the gauge, and then the other one is at the dam down south by TRC. The issues are going to be that right now, it looks like that the Middle Rio Grande Conservancy gets about 405,000 acre feet of water. And we've been exceeding that capability since probably for several years now. There's also a depletion of something like 80,000 acre feet of water being taken from the ground per year. And that's not being replenished as well. So the upshot of all this is that I think rules and regs are coming. Meters may be coming as well. The biggest problem is, like it was in the paper today, there was a good article about agricultural water, and 80% of our fresh water goes towards the agricultural growing of crops. So stay tuned. I mean, the Water Resource Board only meets every quarterly, but they do have some interesting information coming out. Also, you should have received in your emails a couple things from the Metropolitan Transportation Board. They kicked off their safety action plan this past week, and also the TIP process has been finalized, and we voted on that and passed it. So the transportation infrastructure projects are good for the next 5 years. I think there's over $100 million of different projects being worked on, but it's being distributed over the 5 years. And also, we were told, even though the numbers are on the spreadsheet, they will change as monies become available or not available. So stay tuned. Okay, thank you.
I think Michael gets tip money frequently. Yeah. Anyone else? Okay, we'll move on to Cornelius Farm. This section is for informational purposes only, not for discussion and debate. To inform the governing body of an issue or concern that would not be addressed on the agenda during the business session. There's a 3-minute time limit. According to Village Code, Section 2-60G3, regarding public decorum during a meeting, no person shall act in a disorderly manner, nor while addressing the governing body shall any person make any personal, impertinent, or slanderous remarks. Presiding officer may bar anyone acting improperly from continuing his address to the governing body.
Okay, first up is Liz Staley. And if you could please state your name and address for the record, you'll have 3 minutes. Oh, if you'll go up and state your name and address for the record, and then you'll have 3 minutes.
Good evening, Mayor, councilors. Thank you for this opportunity to address you. Like Councilor Knight and her husband, my husband, Jim Belshaw, and I were big fans of the Monk's Refectory restaurant that operated across the street from Corrales Elementary in the 80s and the 90s. And we celebrated most of our special occasions there. And Jim wrote a column for the Albuquerque Journal, and he spoke to the brother who was running the place, and he wanted to write a column about it because it was such a marvelous restaurant and had great atmosphere, and it was so Corrales. And the brother who was in charge, and I'm sorry I can't remember his name, told us that Jim couldn't write a column because the restaurant was closing. And we were so disappointed to hear that, and Jim asked why. And the brother told him that it was because the restaurant did not have a state liquor license, and they had been notified by the state that they had to either obtain one or to stop serving the wine that they made. And that instead the brothers decided to go ahead and shut the restaurant because their making wine was very much a part of their environment. And I understand that the council has been talking about the property, and I just thought I would add that in the hope that it helps whatever deliberations you're making. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Kurt Flora. Mr. Flora, if you can state your name and address for the record, you will have 3 minutes.
Kurt Flora, 560 Andrews Lane, Corrales, New Mexico. The reason we were here tonight is because we were on the agenda. We are no longer on the agenda because I will not sign a paper for only $50,000 is what the village is offered to hush me up. I will not be hushed up for $50,000. This thing has cost us over $150,000 already. 5 years battling this village, $150,000. All we asked was to pay our attorney fees, which was $100,000 in attorney fees. We would take the loss on everything else, okay? We've taken loss. You guys want to shut me up because you guys, planning and zoning in our meetings was corrupt. You falsified documents, you extorted money, you violated IPRA 3 times. One was 850 days. Another one was 1,551 days. The other one was over 1,500 days. You refused to give us the attorney opinion letter, okay? You guys have in front of you what we were going to say on the agenda tonight. What we were going to say on the agenda proves the facts that what happened. It has the facts of what happened in the meetings. Why would we bow down and take hush money from this village for only $50,000? I'm not Stormy Daniels, okay? I am Kurt Flora, and my worth is more than this little corrupt amount that you tried to offer us, okay? All we ask, like I said, is our attorney fees and everything else. You guys are refusing to approve the plat because I won't sign this corrupt paper. My wife will sign the corrupt paper. I will divorce my wife. Matter of fact, I have the divorce papers right here. These are divorce papers that I will divorce my wife right here in front of you tonight so that she can, excuse my French, but so she can subdivide the property that we've been trying to subdivide for 5 years with your corrupt village. I'm sorry.
Calm down.
I'm sorry. You guys have been corrupt for 5 years. Admit it. Just admit it. Okay? Now, if we can't get this done, we were supposed to be on the agenda tonight. It was supposed to be done tonight. You have a paper? Give me a pencil. This is my signature
That's
on
your
the
time,
divorce papers.
Mr. Flora, that's your
Okay?
time.
Time's up.
So my wife can continue to subdivide this property, and I will sign them right here.
Next up is Andrew Pennell. Mr. Pennell, if you can state your name and address for the record, you will also have 3 minutes.
Yes, my name is William Andrew Pennell. I live at 506 West La Entrada. I'm here for 2 reasons, virtually kind of twofold, and they're related. When I was here last, about a month or so ago, they were talking about purchasing some property next to the bank that buys property that runs along behind La Entrada parallel to connect to the the irrigation ditch. To me, that's a bad idea. That's a 25% solution. And I'm just bringing up a second one, which would be to make La Entrada a thoroughfare, to make La Entrada virtually a alternating one lane and a pedestrian road, okay? I've been in Corrales for 35 years, my family. We don't even walk on La Entrada until I happen to purchase a property on La Entrada because it's so much speeding occurs there. You know, I know that they have some monitoring that was done by a machine that you guys had. I don't know what's the real purpose of that? Because those numbers, in my opinion, were skewed and not correct. I don't know, the couple speeders were taken out in the median. I don't know how those numbers were manipulated, but they were, in my opinion. But first, on the good side, the village needs to consider turning La Entrada because it's the entrance. People come to do business. It could be turned in. I've seen baby buggies. All the horses get pushed off the road, have to get into the big dirt. We have the access to put a alternating, on occasion, to a single lane that goes down. I'm sure if you travel to different cities on roads that they're trying to control traffic and speed, but first of all, safety for pedestrians. I've seen baby buggies get into the dirt because people will not slow down. They need to go to Meadowlark, and there needs to be a roundabout. That was the intention of Meadowlark, not La Entrada, okay? And it could be turned into a pedestrian thoroughfare to the village. Like for the 4th of July, for instance, Mayor Farley, they were past La Entrada, past the first ditch. They were parked that far. Why not turn La Entrada during the 4th, a one-way? You could come in, park on La Entrada, but it exits that way. But in this road, like I said, would go down to a single lane median on occasion, control some speed. 35 years ago, 20 years ago, what happened in the village? When someone would come to the village, I would always tell them, don't speed, you'll get a ticket. What's happened in the last 20 years? I asked anyone who lives here. Why has it changed that where it's a thoroughfare through here, speeding's not being enforced? There's complacency, in my opinion, there's complacency, and I don't really, kind of just ambivalent about it. I've talked to you, Mayor, and I've talked to the chief, and it's just kind of a little head pat. Well, the village needs to have people slow down. It doesn't need to be a thoroughfare for Rio Rancho or anything like that. The speed limit is 0 tolerance. When you first put that monitor up, you didn't even put it at 25, you put it at 27 to kick off. I'm like, where's the 0 tolerance in the speed? I want 0 tolerance in the law enforced.
Thank you, sir. That's your time.
That's what I want. And please consider making La Entrada a thorough pedestrian. I'm tired of seeing horses and baby buggies and
Thank you.
people
Your
and
time's up.
families get run off the road because there's 2 cars going through there, speeding.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's everyone for this evening, Mayor.
That's all?
That's it.
I could have sworn I signed in.
But he signed in on the,
No, did you?
And I speak clear, I thought.
Oh,
signed
yeah,
up.
I talked to you before.
Yes, sir.
Sure. He was intending to speak.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay.
I thought I signed up.
Okay, Mr. Martinez, if you can state your name and address for the record?
Yes, ma'am.
And then you'll have 3
My
minutes.
name is Johnny Martinez. I reside at 200 Rafael Court. I was raised in this village. Mayor, council, staff, everybody here, thank you for giving me a hearing this evening. Recently, the council was approached by 2 gentlemen wanting to see lower speed limit on West La Entrada. Coincidence, I'm speaking. It was mentioned that West La Entrada is 19 feet at its narrowest point. La Entrada is that narrow because it was never intended to be a thoroughfare or a literal road, as one might say. But like many things in Corrales, it happened, and so we live with it. And while every man should want to live in a safe neighborhood with his family, he should also be considerate of others. There are no less than 100 homes west of the property one of the gentleman lives on that utilize West La Entrada. There are also no less than 3 public schools providing transportation twice a day on West La Entrada, and also consider other services utilized by the community. I, as well as a few others I've spoken to, do not want the speed limit on La Entrada reduced. I've spoken with our police chief and reviewed traffic data. The village has collected no record of any accidents. I also want a safe neighborhood. However, I see that happening by way of respect and understanding. I don't care what the speed limit sign says. When I see an elderly couple walking in the middle of La Entrada because the dirt sides are muddy, I slowly drive around them and wave. Corraleños are tired of every new ordinance and law affecting their lives, and I don't need a reference from the World Health Organization to tell me that a person will lose to a car every time. A long-time resident of West La Entrada told me, if we really want the speed on West La Entrada reduced, perhaps we should let it go back to a washboard dirt road that always worked. It helps to know a little bit about Corrales history, which is my segue to the next topic. There's been discussion by the council concerning liquor license waiver procedure, Resolution 2347. This is concerning because I hear reference to one of the council members buying liquor location right across from the elementary school. I was raised in this village and I went to that elementary school, and I don't ever remember that location selling liquor. So I reached out to other longtime residents that have been told by others very familiar with that location that it never had a liquor license. So I reached out to the state liquor board. They also have no record of that location ever having a liquor license. So while I can't dispute someone saying that they bought liquor at that location, I can quote state statute 60-78-22 established in 1978 that says, it is a violation of the Liquor Control Act for any person to consume alcoholic beverages in any public establishment unless the establishment is licensed to sell and serve alcoholic beverages. The consumer has responsibility in that act. Paragraph B says it is a violation of the Liquor Control Act for any person not a licensee to sell, serve, or permit consumption of any alcoholic beverages in his public establishment or private club. The reference to a liquor license business across from the elementary school is bogus. And as they never legally served alcohol, the narrative should not become a bold statement to support a waiver. If that ever did happen, both parties would have been in violation of the law. Sorry to have to speak so quickly, but I had to get it all in. Thank you.
Right in time.
Thank you.
Okay, that's everyone now.
That's it. All right. Okay, well, let's move on then to consent agenda. Approval of minutes for July 11th, 2023, regular council meeting, and approval of resolution 23-48, which is the year-end bar. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
So we have a motion to approve and a second for the consent agenda. Do we have any discussion, any comments, anything you want to remove from the consent agenda? Okay, hearing none, how do you vote, Councilor Miera?
Yes, sir.
Councilor Woolman?
Aye.
Councilor Knight?
Aye.
Councilor Murray?
Aye.
Councilor Alsobrook?
Aye.
Councilor Alsobrook?
Aye. 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 Hello?
I think that's an aye. Is that an aye?
He's giving us
Okay.
the thumbs up.
How
And Counselor
about,
Burkett.
how about
is on.
Zach?
Aye.
Okay. So the consent agenda has been approved. New business, consideration, action, and approval of resolution 23-49, approving final quarter financial report. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
So we have a motion to approve and a second. Do we have any discussion? Okay. John, Zach, do you have anything you want to ask?
Both shaking their head no.
Okay. Well, then let's vote. Councilor Murray.
Sorry, Mayor, I couldn't pull it up fast enough. So my only question was, it seems to me that the two quarterly reports do not match, and I'm just wondering why. We have, it looks like what the village supplied, and then we have the quarterly report from the state, but they don't seem to align. Am I missing something?
That was an accident on somebody uploading an extra piece of paper that didn't go there. This is actually your quarterly report.
All right,
Sorry.
so the
Good
one-
evening, Mayor, Council.
The one that was here,
This one is your quarterly report.
tonight.
the one we got tonight. Okay.
The other page after that was a preliminary budget report from the last one, from the
Okay.
last meeting.
Okay.
So this is all that you're looking at.
Very good. Thank you.
The letter from the DFA is there too, right?
The letter from DFA is
Yes,
also.
okay. So we've been approved. We're okay. Any other questions, any other comments? Councilor Murray, how do you vote?
Yes.
Councilor Knight?
Aye.
Councilor Woolman?
Aye.
Councilor Miera?
Yes, sir.
Councilor Alsobrook?
Aye.
Oh, I saw that. That was very good. Councilor Burkett?
Aye.
All right, so 2349 has been approved. Consideration, action, approval of resolution 2350, adopting final fiscal year 2023-2024 budget. I need a motion to approve.
So moved.
Have a motion to approve
Second.
and a second. Any discussion, any comments, any questions? We've sort of beat this poor horse to death. Okay, hearing none, Councilor Miera,
Yes, sir.
Councilor Woolman.
Aye.
Councilor Knight,
Aye.
Councilor Murray,
Yes.
Councilor Burkett,
Aye.
Councilor Alsobrook. How do you vote, Councilor Alsobrook?
Aye.
Thank you.
Aye.
Got it. Okay.
Comic relief.
Number 3, consideration, action, approval of resolution 23-51, approving the fixed asset inventory. Wow. I need a motion to approve. It's a long one, yeah. I have a motion to approve.
Second.
And a second. Any questions? Marina's holding her breath. Okay, hearing none. Oh, do you guys have any questions? Okay, hearing none. How do you vote, Councilor Woolman?
Aye.
Councilor Knight?
Aye.
Councilor Murray?
Aye.
Councilor Miera?
Yes, sir.
Councilor Burkett?
Aye.
Councilor Alsobrook?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank
I think
you.
is that all, Raina? Okay, now we're going to 4. Consideration action approval of resolution 23-52 adopting the 2025-2029 infrastructure capital improvement plan, the ICIP. Do I have a motion for approval?
So moved.
Okay, we have a motion to approve. Do we have a second?
Second.
And I have a second. Any discussion, questions, comments? Okay, it's just a list asking for money, you know. Lots of money.
Maybe.
Yeah, maybe money, yeah. Maybe we'll get some money.
Maybe.
Yeah. Okay, well then we'll go ahead. Counselor Burkett, how do you vote?
Aye.
Counselor Alsobrook,
I vote aye.
Counselor Murray,
Aye.
Counselor Knight,
Aye.
Counselor Woolman,
Aye.
Counselor Miera.
Yes, sir.
Okay, number 5, consideration action approval of ordinance 23-05 rezoning the Anderson property from A1 to M. A1 being agricultural or rural residential and M being municipal public and quasi-public. I need a motion for approval.
So moved.
And I have a second. Okay, we have a motion for approval and a second. Any questions, comments? Okay, hearing none. How do you vote, Counselor Knight?
Aye.
Counselor Murray?
Aye.
Counselor Miera?
Yes, sir.
Counselor Woolman?
Aye.
Counselor Burkett?
Aye.
Counselor Alsobrook?
Aye.
All right. Number 6, consideration action approval of ordinance 23-06, amending section 2-26 of the Code of Ordinances for the Village of Krause, increasing pay rates for mayor and council members. I need a motion for approval.
So moved.
I have a motion to approve. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
And a second from Murray.
Mayor?
Is anybody going to talk?
Yes, on this one, we do have one person that would like
Okay,
to speak.
because I'd forgotten to ask you about the others.
We were good on the others.
Okay. Who's going to talk?
Mr. Fred Hashimoto. And if you could state your name and address for the record, you'll have 3 minutes.
I'm Fred Hashimoto. I live at 485 East Long Travel. I favor this motion. I think it's a small step in the right direction and a long time coming. Thank you.
Thank you, Doc. Anyone else?
That's it.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mayor. I also am in favor of this motion mainly because I think we need to have, when time comes, and especially during elections, people step up that are able to. They may be working, they may be retired, but if they're working and they don't get paid time off to go take care of business when there is village business to be taken care of, this is a small compensation to kind of cover those expenses that they might incur. It seems to me that this is long overdue. We've been years, 20 years since the last? So, I mean, I think it's overdue. And you also put more time in probably than anybody else around here. You ought to at least get some compensation for the work that you do.
So I'll respond to that.
Okay.
I think it's great. I think it's an absolutely wonderful thing. My compensation is working here in the village, working with all these wonderful people who are our administrative people, our police officers, our firefighters. I mean, we have some really wonderful people who are devoted to this village.
I agree.
So I get a lot of secondary gain out of it, just being around these people. I enjoy it. They're smart. They keep me out of trouble most of the time. So, yeah, I'm not for getting a lot of money.
Well, I don't think it's a lot of money, but it's a step in the right direction.
Yeah. Counselor Knight.
Yeah, I'm going to vote no on this. And I know in previous committees or meetings, I didn't want this even brought up. And it's not because I don't think everybody does a great job. I stay up at night worrying about different issues. And I'm sure all of us get calls from constituents as well as other people in the village. I just think the amount is too much. I think we need a raise, but I think the amount is a little bit too much. That's what I have a problem with.
Okay. John, Zach, you have any comments?
I do briefly. I mean, can you hear me?
Yeah.
I think that most of us on the council probably do not need a pay raise. And I think we largely get the council we get because most of us on the council don't need a pay raise. Either we're retired or we have the luxury of some free time. And my hope with this is that it'll hopefully open up the doors to some people that's a little bit more of a challenge, but represent other demographics within the village. And if in any way them giving up the amount of free time that this requires and not being compensated for it is a limitation to them running for office or thinking that they can, this will hopefully make that go away. And every one of us has the ability to pass on the salary. So if we don't need it, or if we think it's too much, we can all pass on it. But if somebody really's time is at a premium, and this is between a second job and helping the village, I would rather them put their time in this and know that they're going to get paid something for doing so.
Okay. Anybody else? Okay, well, how about we vote?
Mayor?
Yes, sir, John.
Sorry. My only concern here is that I do agree with Councilor Burkett's remarks and the other councilors as well. I just wish we had been able to hear from somebody who would have very concretely said, I would have run for office, but I can't spend 20 hours a week at $30 an hour, doing that. So I need to not run. I'm not sure it's the scope of the problem is what we're thinking it is, but I think the concept is good. I just wish we had some data.
Okay, so let's vote. Is everybody voicing their opinion? Let's vote. Councilor Murray, how do you vote?
Yes.
Councilor Knight?
No.
Councilor Woolman?
Aye.
Councilor Miura?
Yes, sir.
Councilor Burkett?
Aye.
Councilor Alsobrook?
I'm going to vote no.
So that's 4-2. Okay, so that ordinance increasing pay, ordinance 23-06 passes. Okay, now we move to 7. Consideration action approval of possible bond question projects and amounts.
We do have several people signed up.
I know, I'm just trying to think of how to, this is not really, it says approval of possible, I guess we should make a motion to put it on the table. So I need a motion to put it on the table.
So moved.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, so Melanie has put together a sheet at the back, at the last part of our packet, describing some of the things that we all talked about in previous discussions for your perusal, for your evaluation, and we have people who wish to speak.
Yes.
Okay.
First up is Fred Hashimoto. And I think we have your name and address already, so you'll get your 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mayor and councilors. Bonds for fire and roads? Yes. We know we're paying taxes for there. But for some of the others, it seems that some of the bond proposals might be committing a lot of money to very uncertain expenses. Having an ACE center is a good idea, but do quote construction documents, unquote, for it really cost $500,000 to $1 million? I don't know. Another uncertain issue is a farmland preservation proposed bond for conservation easements. Historically, few persons have wanted them on the vacant land, and surface water farming has become increasingly difficult. Conservation easements are generally a good idea, but approval should not be given carte blanche for any proposed lot whose owner wants a conservation easement. The non-development of some lots has very little value for the village. If any conservation easement bond is contemplated, it should be flexible to allow monies to be spent for fee-simple purchases. The 2004 farmland preservation bond was used to purchase a Gonzales 5.5 acres farmland. The 2018 farmland preservation bond question was a duplicate of the 2004 question. Councilor at that time thought that fee simple purchases would be allowed, as it was in the case for the 2004 bond. However, the mayor went through several bond attorneys to declare that fee simple purchases would not be allowed, so that bond monies could not be used for something like the Gonzales 3 acres, even though the 5.5 acres behind it were purchased from the similar 2004 farmland preservation bond. Fortunately, a financial windfall helped to finance the 3 acres, and hopefully we'll get that property soon. What if the village wants to buy the bank or other property? Where will it get the money from? If this bond proposal should proceed, please consider making it flexible so that monies can be used for fee simple purchasing. Thank you very much.
Next, we have Sarah Gerhart. And if you can state your name and address for the record, you will have 3 minutes.
Sarah Gerhart, 677 Dixon Road, Corrales. Mayor and councilors. Recently, I've been reading the village comprehensive plans going back to 1974, and each include a full section on farmland preservation. The farmland preservation goal is part of the village DNA, along with our 1 and 2 acre zoning minimums. And I was told a major intention behind the incorporation. The 2009 comprehensive plan includes a couple of objectives, one of which reads, encourage the village's acquisition of land and interest in land for the preservation of agricultural use. And about 25 years ago, the Historical Society sponsored a series of 6 or 7 forums with the owners of the large remaining farms in the village at that time on the topic of farmland preservation. And from these community discussions, the village founded the Farmland Preservation Committee and passed the first bond in, I think, 2001. So I remember it passed with 84% voter approval. The program's not only popular, but also a huge success. It's preserved many acres in Corrales. I think other people have the number. The leader and model in New Mexico. The village should continue to fund this program. I wish it was on the ICIP. I was told it's not. And that's just because there's state money now for land conservation. And my understanding is that projects need to be on the ICIP to receive state funding. But anyhow, I think the council should fund the program, and here's why. 50 years after incorporation now, we still all benefit from the property owners who have kept their land open in agriculture or with corrals or open space, and we all benefit from this, not just the large farms, but also the smaller 2 to 4 acre spaces woven into our neighborhoods like pocket parks. Owners may have to sell at some point, maybe because of a move or a death or whatever the reason, and as a community, I believe we must offer these property owners an alternative to selling to developers. Not all owners may choose the farmland preservation alternative, but the Corrales program is currently the only way for the community to support the property owners who value keeping the land in agriculture. Aldo Leopold, the author of Sand County Almanac, says, we abuse land because we regard it as a commodity belonging to us. When we see the land as a community to which we belong, we begin to use it with love and respect. Of course, today land is still bought and sold as a commodity, and the conservation easement program fits into this system. Let's acknowledge the value of the land. The land is to us our quality of life, all our property values, our food, as space for horses, and acknowledge that to preserve it, we have to pay for it. I humbly ask, give property owners options, give the community a voice in this issue, and give the land respect and love. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah.
Next is Ms. Lisa Brown. And if you could state. That would be for the mayor.
I'm sorry, what?
Thank you, Mayor. I was just asking if Stacia and I may share our time, our 3 minutes each.
Well, you each get 3 minutes.
Right, I just thought we might talk to.
Tag team?
Tag team.
We really haven't allowed that in the past.
That's okay if you don't want to.
So she can speak for 3 minutes and you can speak for 3 minutes.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, councilors, for letting me speak to you tonight. Farmland preservation is foundational. Land conservation is foundational to Corrales. It is what our other values, our artistic values, our businesses, our events, Harvest Festival, and our restaurants that serve our local produce depend on. Farmland preservation and open space preservation are in fact infrastructure in Corrales. And it's it's an issue that is urgent. It's an issue that is now or never. We have open space now. We have landowners interested. We would also like to expand our program to include the western sector if people so desire. If landowners want to apply for this and they have some conservation value in their land and they want us to consider this, we would like this to be a program that is expanded all over the village. Land conservation, open space provides so many benefits that are intangible, as well as the ones that we can benefit from directly. Coming into the village, driving into Corrales Road, it's because of our open space. We also benefit from the critters that feed on that land and then come to our gardens. It's so foundational to who we are. It brings people here. This is what brings people here. It is the infrastructure that brings people to Corrales. And it's now or never. Once you develop open space, it's gone. It's gone forever. You can pave a road today. You can pave a road in 10 years. You can pave a road over and over again, and you will have to once you pave it. That's it. You're going to pave it and pave it and pave it, and you're going to spend money on that. Open space, farmland benefits the village because it's the least expensive way for the village to have a benefit. It remains in private hands. They're the ones who are responsible for taking care of it, but the village benefits from it. They don't need to provide the services that you provide to subdivisions, to houses. What would you like? Would you like 6 acres of houses, 6 houses and all the huge garages that go with that? Or would you like open space and farmland forever? Forever. And that's what conservations do. Conservation easements are forever in perpetuity. It will always be like that for our children, our grandchildren.
Thank you. That's your time.
Thank you, Lisa.
Okay. And Stacia, I'm sorry, I can't read your last name. Sprague?
Sister Angela Lee, very embarrassed that my penmanship.
If you could state your name and address for the record,
You
you'll have.
picked it up from your husband, I think.
Sorry?
You picked it up from your husband.
Oh, no, he prints that Dr. Wright, that doctor script. Stacia Sprague Brody of 366 Las Paredes. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, councilors and staff. I've lived here about 30 years, and my boy is going to be a senior at Siebel this year. Let's hope he graduates if he passes algebra, that is. And theoretically, heading to college in a year from today. And he recently said to me, he's like, I have really loved growing up here. There are many times where he's like, oh, it's so small, there's nothing to do here. So this kid has, he helped on Evelyn Losak's farm. He climbed all the trees and has worked at the farmer's market with our farm and hung out in the bosque. He's done everything, floated the river, maybe a few other things that you guys don't want to know about. But anyway, he wants to come back here and he's like, is this place always going to be like this? And I'm like, babe, we're working on it. And that's one thing I promised Evelyn Losak on her deathbed. She's like, honey, keep the faith. And that's what I've been doing for 20 years on farmland conservation. Because with this bond, getting this third bond, it is an opportunity for us to really take a deep look, get past the Twitter brain and say, what do we want this village to look like? What do we want it to feel like in 20 years from now, from 40 years, 50 years? And it's not just food preservation, food security, but it's open space. It's also wildlife habitat. This is like a major corridor for migratory waterfowl. Without fields, there's nothing. We could easily, in 20 or 30 years, if we don't get a bond on here and save the last of our farmland, essentially be an extension of Albuquerque. And I think we all have the experience of crossing that bridge and turning on the road And here we are, and here's this open space. This is a great opportunity where the village doesn't have to buy the land. The landowners maintain ownership, but that is open space, farmland in perpetuity. There are countless opportunities for us as well to team up with Trails Committee and get trails through open space, have bird watching, have, in other words, like Lisa said, it's kind of the foundation of what we're all about. And if we don't have farms, and if we don't have growers, there's no growers market, there's no harvest fest. Sure, you can have, the dunk tank, and I love to dunk the chief over there and get my turkey leg, but I'd really like to see the harvest and the harvest fest, and this is a way to do it. And it's the only way that right now we can get easements is through a bond. We can't get money any other way at this point. So I just ask you to consider that and to kind of take a long view, and because I'd certainly like to see my grandkids come back here. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, and the last speaker of the evening is Mr. Anthony Wagner. And if you two could please state your name and address for the record, you will have 3 minutes as well.
Anthony Wagner, 60 Quail Trail. And good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. I represent the Wagner family, and we are in support of getting another bond out there for farmland preservation. We feel that, a lot of the farms, it's changed a lot now in Corrales. We've lost a lot of our farms, and hopefully we could keep what we have and preserve these farms. I think it's a benefit to the whole village. We've been farming over 100 years here in Corrales, and it's been challenging. I gotta say, last year was challenging with water. Even this year, we've had water. It's been good, but who knows? In this next month, the river's going down, and we might have challenges with water and all that again. But we were really in support of. We've been in support of these bonds. In 2018, we worked a lot to try to get that bond in there. My daughters hosted dinners and different things to try to raise money and what have you for it. So we'd like to see it again, get another bond, try to see what we could do to preserve the lands that we do have, that we still have here in Corrales, and I think it benefits us all. It's nice coming to Corrales and you do see farmland, that we still have some. But I ask your support in putting this bond out there, and see if we can do this again and try to preserve the lands that we do have left. Thank you for your support.
Is that it?
That's it.
So I have one correction, because I found this out after Melanie had put the bond discussion items together. Facility Build gave an estimate for plan, design, construction documents, and a virtual 3D walkthrough of a building. I think we talked about that, Stuart, at one meeting, and it was going to be like $385,000. So it's much less than the numbers we threw down here. Okay, how do we want to start this? Yes, sir.
Mr. Mayor, on that last statement, if that's down, you even had it 500 to 1 million. So let's just say it's 385, make it 400. Does that change? Does that mean we have to put more monies in the others, or is that still negotiable? As Fred, I think he brought up a good point for those people that are just listening on the internet. How much of this is negotiable funding, and how much of this is already assumed? But the latter part is not part of that. We don't know who they are.
I'm not sure what you mean by negotiable. You are going to pick a number, and the reason you pick fire substation number 3, we put $1 million on that one, is because their project for that substation and equipment is estimated at $1.2 million. They have 200,000, and so we put $1 million on that. And of course, now the ACE Center wouldn't be constructed, but it'd be shovel ready. It'd be on the shelf ready to go if we can find the funding from another source. The roads and storm drainage, we use those funds for matching. So for example, a tip or a a MAP, or whatever those different acronyms are, Michael will use those funds in the bond as a 25 or 30. You've seen that when the money's,
Sure.
he uses that for a match to get those funds because they require a match.
And that's what I was bringing up, not for a question for myself, but for those that are listening that don't understand that part, they could understand what it is that we're doing and why we have this ability from 5 to something. I just want the people that are listening to understand.
Those are all estimates that we would like to get. Yes, sir.
Mayor, could we have a discussion about the amount and the number of years first, perhaps? In other words, we were given an option by the bond council last meeting, as to whether or not we should go for a $4 million or $2.5 million, whether it should be for 4 years or 2 years. I think it would be beneficial if we could have that discussion.
Okay, when we have a bond election, let's say we picked 1, 2, 3.2, let's say 3.2, 3.6, that would be 3.6. Let's say we did 4, just a round number. Okay, you do $4 million. You have, if it's approved, then you have the ability to sell $4 million total. You have 4 years to sell it. Once sold, you have 3 years to spend it. And that's why we said we really want to use these funds for things that we really believe we need, that we can spend it on, such as fire suppression, firehouse, roads and drainage, for sure. Now, that's why the question came up about farmland. Is there farmland available? Because if you have the money and you're trying to spend it within the allotted time, you want to have the land that you're going to spend it on identified.
My understanding is that if we were to go for the full $4 million and committed to that on a bond, we'd have to identify the projects and they could not be changed without great difficulty.
Correct.
So my question.
Well, wait a minute, that's not correct. The language is fairly general for things like, like roads and drainage.
Right.
It's fairly general
You don't have
for,
to specify which roads, but you have.
you don't have to say which roads.
Right.
And the same with the substation. We're going to do the substation number 3. So we don't have to do much more than just say, this is what we're going to do. And we're going to get fire equipment, firefighting equipment. So those are, I think those are general enough, and Jill Sweeney will help us, work through those things. The farmland preservation, you do not have to identify the lands you're going to purchase that conservation easement on. With the ACE Center, we're pretty much focused in on trying to get something we can show people, something we can show people who would donate funds, and that's why the virtual walkthrough.
Okay, so you're leaning toward going for the full amount of the probably 4 or 4.5 million?
I was for the 2.5 initially. And then when she put all these together, I started thinking, well, we sort of need to do this. We sort of need to do that. It would be nice to have this in hand, ready to go. And then the farmland request, the farmland conservation easement request came in. So fortunately, you're the ones who get to vote on that.
And you, if there's a tie.
Yes, ma'am.
I hope we have money for everything on here. Figure it out some way, 4,500,000. I mean, if that's what Jill is saying we can afford to do, I think we should afford to do it.
We don't have to do.
Because I live on the west side and I represent people from the west side who need help with drainage and roads. So I have to promote that. But I also want to see farmland preservation, and I also want to see the ACE Center and help Anthony out with the fire equipment. So if we could somehow, move the money around so everybody gets something.
You can only move the money around as is allowed by your bond.
Right.
I mean, you can't have road and storm drainage money and then use it for easement.
Right. I know it has to be specific. I mean, not specific what roads are going to be done,
Right.
but this is going to be
General
used for
category.
roads. Right, the category. So,
And in fact, we're going to have a final vote on this the first meeting in August, correct?
We have to identify the projects
I
tonight.
know that, but it's going to come back to us for a
and then
final vote.
Yeah, the actual wording of the bond questions will be what is voted on at the next meeting. And
so-
if I may,
Yes,
since
ma'am.
Jill's not here, While they said that we have the capability to go up to the 4 million, they're not really recommending
Right.
that we do that. Just to clarify, I think Jill would probably jump in and say that if she were here.
Yes, sir.
Well, Mayor, Councilor, yeah, I think what I gathered from Jill's last comment was to keep the mill levy constant, we're looking at around $2.5 million. That was my impression at the time.
Well, correct me, Melanie, because I think you talked a little bit more to Brad about this, but he likes the 4 million over 4 years. That means we would have an election, and then we couldn't have another bond question for 4 years in order to level it off. Is that correct?
That is correct. So they said we could do the 4 million now, but then we would skip having a bond question on the 2025 ballot. And then, but that would mean that you're locking in all of these projects. So if something comes up and you say, oh, I wish we hadn't, promised Anthony the $1 million for, I'm going to pick on you, Anthony. That would be a problem later
Well,
on.
I think also if we're looking at interest rates, what are they going to be in 2 years? In 25, they may be bottom again, and our cost is going to go down based on the bond issue. So if we pick two tonight that say come up to about $2.5 million for the 23 election, then I think we're keeping the mill levy pretty constant, and it leaves us open for another election in 25 for another 2 million or 2.5 million, whatever we have left. And maybe more because the valuations are going up based on, what they were telling us the last time.
And Councilor Burkett has his hand up.
I'm sorry, what?
Councilor Burkett would like to say
Councilor
something.
Burkett.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Thank you, councilors. So my inclination would be to lean the other direction towards going to 4.5 million, because I think every election cycle, we're going to have these small things that are 500,000 and $1 million, and that's not small, but in the grand scheme of things, if we only have $2 million to spend, we're going to eat up a lot of that $2 million every time we have a bond election. If we want to do big packages like conservation easements or even fire suppression, I think it makes more sense to make them for bigger bonds so we can really make an impact. Right now, I mean, just not to pick on fire suppression or particularly the substation, it's number 3 on our ICIP list. It's also on this bond. So we're kind of putting all of our eggs, the same eggs, in 2 baskets, which may or may not make sense. But this is the only way we can get money for farmland conservation. And as of right now, there is one very high profile 6 acres that's available. There's another 7 acres that's lower profile, but it has adjacent acreage that'll be available potentially in the future that could amount to a significant double-digit amount of acres. There's lots of small farms that I think would be interesting. I very much agree with something Dr. Hashimoto said as far as expanding the abilities to both purchase and buy conservation easements, but I don't know that we have the time to do that on this particular bond. But in the future, I would love to explore that further to where we don't have just one pathway to go. But I don't think, if the concern right now is we don't have land that's available, and if the concern on the last one, we didn't have land was available, it's just not accurate. We had a lot of land that was available, and there was a very significant vetting process to figure out what land most appropriately reflected the desires of the people running that bond. So there are people in the village who want land preserved. There are many people who have land and want to preserve it. We know very specifically, we could spend the $1.2 million very easily. I think that's a very low number right now. I mean, I would love to see conservation go up closer to 2 million. And again, just 4.5, I would say we do the 4-year bonding right now so we can take a bigger swing at things instead of just small pieces at little things, and really kind of doing repair projects instead of large looking forward projects, which these are.
Okay, Councilor Murray.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. So I think there's a fallacy about the farmland preservation being in perpetuity, because I had a brief discussion with the attorney. These are just contracts, and a contract can be broken, especially if the value of the land increases so much that it exceeds what the farmland preservation was paid for. And if that's the case, if the valuation of the land really exceeds the value of the preservation, then that person might take it upon themselves to take the pain, fight the conservation, break the contract, sell the land at the higher rate, and then what have we done? We've basically given a interest-free loan to the person who has reserved the land during that time. So I think we got to point out that at this point, let's put the fee simple back in on this, because if there are properties up on the west side, especially if they are undevelopable, we should probably think about buying those properties, because they could go into storm drainage. We can look at, flooding and issues like that. But I think there's a fallacy about the farmland preservation that just needs to be explored, and we need to think about this, because I'm worried that, we're going to be gone here maybe 25, 30 years. There may even be properties available now that are exceeding the value of the preservation. And if they decide to break the contract, they can do that. So let's make sure that if we do this, let's make sure that we have the ability to purchase the land, fee simple, and then we'll own it outright.
Hold that thought. I need a break.
Okay, 10 minutes?
Won't take that.
So he.
I had my hand raised, but it's hard to see on my background, so maybe didn't see that. I can wait till we get back.
So
I've got you up on the big screen, Counselor.
Thank you.
Zach, you look hot. There's no air conditioning?
It's there is air conditioning, but it's hot and humid. So yeah, it's warm out here.
So is the water hot too?
It is. It's like 85, 86 degree water.
Wow.
Yeah, it's toasty right now.
Yeah. That the owner can't.
Okay, thank you very much. Sorry.
And I believe Counselor Alsobrook had a
Counselor
question.
Alsobrook, please enlighten us.
That's a tall order, Mayor, but I do have a comment. I just wanted to follow on Councilor Burkett's and Councilor Murray's remarks. I agree. I didn't quite understand the earlier remarks about fee simple being excluded from use of bonds for acquisition, that we had to rely on easements. I'd like to hear more about that. But then to follow on what Councilor Burkett was saying, I do think I would like to see half of each bond amount be devoted to that, whether it's the easement preservation or just outright fee simple acquisition. But I think half of our bonding capacity should be used for that.
Okay. Does anybody want to make a proposal?
I actually have a question.
Yes, sir.
Perhaps our counselor could answer. Are we permitted to purchase land outright under the bonding capacity?
Counselor, we're going to have to check with bond counsel on that. I'm not familiar with the rules for bonding revenue. It is typically capital expenditures, which are a little bit different than purchase of real property. So I think there is an issue with that, but I would definitely think we need to ask that question of Jill.
And one other question. I think the general understanding is that there are no other opportunities through state money to purchase land or to use for conservation easement. And is that correct? Do you know?
You can't use the ICIP money. Well, let's say you probably can, but they won't give you money to buy land. You're not prevented, but they won't give you money for it.
Yeah, so you can ask, but you're not gonna get it.
They're not gonna do it. It's an issue that the Flood Control Authority has run into many times.
So this would be the one way to obtain money for conservation easements.
You can buy land with bond money, but not if you designate it as farmland preservation money. Now, you may be able to do it.
You could buy farmland, but not call it farmland preservation.
That's correct. Okay. But you couldn't use a bond that's for conservation easements to do that.
But you could do, what about for open space? Same thing?
We were doing open space. We have lots of open space right now. We're in the process of getting another 3.5 acres right across the street from us, basically. I think that we bought that 2 acres down next to the post office.
But we didn't use bonds to do that.
No, we use cash.
Right.
Correct. We use donated money and cash for the soccer fields.
So So the question remains, can bond money be used to purchase land?
Yes, the answer is yes, you can purchase land.
Okay.
You can't, but you'll have to designate it for that purpose. So you can't just say, okay, we're going to purchase land in the case of a municipality. Now, for the Flood Control Authority, because it's considered part of flood control, and they have different rules for the Flood Control Authority with regard to bonds than we, a municipality, do. I mean, we're not limited to 4 years and 3 years. I mean, we get the bonds for 10 or 12 years.
Yep.
And then take them as we need them. So it's a little different rules that we follow, different set of rules. My feeling is we've made such a huge investment toward fire suppression, and we've gotten a huge amount of money from the legislature already. I think that should be one of our choices, fire suppression and fire equipment. The $1 million will complete that project, and it should be ready to go. I mean, just take planning and design and what else, Chief? What do you think? And we don't have that legislative funds yet, do we? Or do we?
Mayor, Council, yes, we do have the legislative funds.
Okay.
And we just need to complete the plan and design, and we already have permission from Conservancy.
And we believe that the $1.2 million will cover fire substation number 3?
They will.
Okay. So then roads and storm drainage, I already told you the issue with roads and storm drainage. Yes, they'll always be there, but we need to deal with them when they're there. We can't have people getting, floating down the road because their house is being washed away. We can't have storm floods going through houses, garages. We have to deal with those things when they occur. Regardless of what is said about a washboard surface, I don't think that's going to slow down everybody. So we need to make the roads safe, because if they go too fast on a washboard surface, a rough road, potholes and whatever, we may have more accidents because people lose control. So we need to make our roads safe. I'm not real excited, I'll admit, about more farmland preservation money. I wasn't excited the last time that we approved it. I okayed it going forward for election because I was going to let the people decide if they wanted to spend their tax dollars on a conservation easement. We can certainly do that. The ACE building, I think we can probably do the planning, the design, the construction documents in a virtual walkthrough for less than $500,000. Quoted estimate was 384 something. Does that sound right to you? Yeah. Yes, sir.
Mayor,
I was on a roll right now.
oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead,
Well,
Stuart. I'm just.
Since you're speaking about the ACE project, maybe it makes more sense rather than take on a bond issue where we're gonna have to pay out for 30 years for the drawings. Let's just take it out of the LGIP money and pay for it straight out. That way you don't have to worry about being stuck for 30 years paying on those drawings. Let's pay cash, get those drawings going. Then you get your committees, we get the committees together and start working on the funding. Once you're shovel ready, I think the point being would be that it's an incentive to go fund the rest of it. I think we've got the cash. Let's use it and not put it on a bond issue where we're going to pay for 30 years on it.
I'll second that. Thank you.
And Councilor Alsobrook has a comment.
Councilor Alsobrook, sorry, I can't see you.
You're muted.
Got it now. Thank you, Melanie, and thank you, Mayor. Just following up on Councilor Murray's there, the way this was, there's interesting phrasing here for the ACE Center. It says it would also help gauge community interest in proceeding with the project.
Yeah.
That's actually turning the bond issue into a referendum, which is not something we should be doing. And if we're still at the stage where we're trying to gauge community interest, we shouldn't be bonding this.
Well, that's a good point. And actually, I'm the one who made that comment. Melanie was just writing down something I had said.
Well, I've heard. I mean, I've heard similar. You're not the only one, certainly, Mayor. I've heard that from others, something similar. So, but I think it's if that's really where we are, we shouldn't be.
So, what do we want to tell Jill? We'll take the ACE Center off.
Yeah,
Keep 1, 3, and 4.
I think that was a great idea from Councilor Murray.
Counselor Burkett also has his hand up.
Counselor Burkett.
Yeah, are we at the, so is this something we're going to make a motion and vote on, or is this just a discussion? Because my suggestion would be if we get rid of the ACE, that we go up to $2 million on conservation easement, do $1 million on the other two, Public Works and Fire Station 3, and spread it out over the 4 years and know that there's properties that we can get, but then we have a little bit more money for some of the properties we're unaware of that we can get, but I'm sure they're out there.
What we're going to do is we're going to come up with some items for the, a bond election that we will hand to Jill, and she will put them in the right language, and then we will vote on it August 8th. But we're going to have to come up with a list tonight, correct? That's our plan tonight. Councilor Murray.
Well, this gets back to the farmland preservation. I think that we've got to find out about fee simple purchases and make sure that that phrasing is clear on the bond issue. If we're allowed to purchase land under this bond issue outright, that we can do that. As some of the arguments made from the 2018 bond election was, it said purchase fee simple or something to that phrase, and yet the previous mayor said no, you couldn't do that. But I think part of that may have been because it was under the Department of Agriculture. They wouldn't allow the purchase of the land for that. But since we're doing this without any other strings attached as a bond issue, I would want to make sure that we can do fee simple purchases as part of this bond issue.
If you label this for a farmland conservation easement, you cannot do fee simple.
Yeah, that's the point, but it should say open space, farmland preservation, or open space fee simple, or something to that effect. It gives us some flexibility that if we get a chance to purchase something up on the west side, that maybe be an advantage of the village, we can do that. That's all I'm asking, is that we make sure that we can say farmland preservation or open space fee simple purchase or whatever, something.
If you're purchasing land up on the west side for flood control, we have roads and storm drainage.
But I think that was over on Loma Largas where we were talking mostly along, because.
Well, you can use it for storm drainage.
Well, I know, but anyway.
So Lisa, do you have any comments about this discussion? Would you like to come speak? It's a little out of order, I understand, but since she's been involved with this for so long.
First, I want to say that conservation easements are in perpetuity, and people cannot just sell the land, sell the easement because the price goes up. That is not the way it works. It is held in trust with a land trust. We work with the New Mexico Land Conservancy so far. They make sure that this land is never developed, and it can't be. There is a possibility that it could be traded if there's some sort of if the village, for example, had some land that they wanted to exchange and keep open rather than the land that was preserved, they could potentially make a trade, but it cannot be developed because the price goes up. The landowner cannot make that choice to do that.
But
that's the first thing.
My understanding is this is a land contract, is it not?
Well,
I mean, it's a contract between the Conservancy District and the landowner.
it's not a
And the contract can, as such?
Let me jump in. So this is there's both a contract and a deed. So it isn't easy to get out of. So it is not something that is easy to overturn. Someone can attempt to do it. Someone can go bankrupt and leave the property, and it's just like any other purchase of property. There's lots of things that can happen with it, but it is a very safe methodology to accomplish it. It isn't high risk.
No, I'm not saying it's high risk, but it is possible that the contract could be breached and terminated.
Mayor, can I make a point?
Yes, sir.
Councilor Burkett. Sorry, I think that if there is an incredible long shot that somebody could overturn one of these, that's one thing. But I think also if we put in Fire Station Substation 3 or do fire suppression, that doesn't guarantee us we're not going to have a house burned down. Or if we do wastewater doesn't mean that someone's not going to have contaminated well water. We can't get guarantees on any of these things, but I think this is a legally safe maneuver for the village to preserve the land.
I agree. I've never heard of one of these things being overturned without some real major negotiation that involves a trade, and there still ends up being land preserved. And maybe it's not that particular piece, but it's like a very complicated trade. I mean, you're the expert on that, but I just wanted to sort of let you know that that's very likely not going to happen.
Maybe not in our lifetimes, but look 50, 100 years from now.
No, I know. I mean, that is the point, though. But that is exactly the point, that we are looking 50, 100 years from now, and we want this land to be preserved for our kids and for future generations, and so that they can have the kind of, world that we benefit from.
I don't think it's going to happen because, one, we're, like I say, earlier discussions about the water resources, irrigation is going to get more expensive. You're not going to be able to raise the crops that you think, and so forth.
But that's another point that I want to clarify, that we are talking about more than farmland preservation. We're talking about open space. We're talking about open space, and that is in the bond language. Farmland, open space, all of that conservation. It isn't just farmland. So thank you for that point. That's true. If I may say one more thing, that was the question that I think was on the table when I came up here, which was the question of fee simple versus conservation easements. I think the benefit to conservation easements is that the village does not own the land.
Correct.
I don't recommend that the village buy the land because the village is then responsible for the land, and that's very expensive. This is a really inexpensive, relatively inexpensive way for Corrales to have open space for the benefit of all of us. We don't have to manage it. We don't have to pay for it. We pay for the easement, but it's just a percentage of what it would cost to buy it, and then it stays open, and it's not the village's responsibility. It's much less expensive than housing development. I guess that's all I have to say, unless you have more questions.
Go ahead.
Yeah, just a quick question if I
Sure.
could. Lisa, thank you. Councilor Burkett indicated that he'd like to raise to, if we go for the 4-year to, let's say, $2 million. Are there properties, I'll put it very simply, will you be able to spend the money?
Yes.
I mean, are there enough properties
Yes.
that could translate into use of the bond money?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you, Mayor.
So, Melanie, can you make a note to check with Jill and Brad? The question, can you phrase the question you would like for her to?
Well, I mean,
about fee simple, using the bond money
land
for?
preservation or open space, purchase fee simple or something to that effect.
Okay.
Okay.
You got the
I'll
drift?
contact her tomorrow.
Okay.
And Mayor, I understand each of these will be a separate bond question then?
Correct.
Okay.
So people can vote for the one they want. So my suggestion would be, looking for what you guys have to say. We do the fire substation 3 and equipment for $1 million. We do the roads and storm drainage for $1 million, and we do the farmland preservation as they have requested, depending upon what the response is from Jill Sweeney. So that's a total of 3.2 million.
Okay.
It's not the whole 4. It's a little more than 2. Potentially, we could still have a bond election in a couple of years, potentially. And keep the mill, that's what we're using. We can get more money, but our mill levy will change.
Yep.
And we want to keep the mill levy at about, what, 2.4? Isn't that what it was? Yeah. So Zach?
Yep, Mayor. I mean, I would suggest we go to 2 on conservation easements. I know we can get money for these other projects from elsewhere. I know that the public works stuff is multiplied because we have matches.
Yeah, let's, I don't want to get the money just to spend it, just because you can find something to spend it on.
I mean, I think that's the exact reason to get the money, is because we know that there's stuff out there and it may not be there 2 years from now, or it may be worth 30% more 2 years from now than it is now. I think there is a lot of ticking clocks that we're up against with conservation easement stuff.
Okay. John, do you have any comments? Do we want to have a straw vote on this to see where you stand, if this is okay?
Mayor, my only other comment is I really object going to 4 years for the bond issue. I'd rather see it 2, just because I like options. And I understand where Councilor Burkett's coming with, thinking of, we need to go purchase these lands now, but 4 years from now, I'm not sure, I'm just not liking the idea of going that 4-year period without having something to fall back on in 2.
Okay, do you have a suggestion how we arrange the money?
I don't, but that's just my opinion. That's.
Yeah.
Mayor, can I make a comment?
Yes, sir.
Sorry, but so one of our speakers earlier said that we have had conservation and farmland preservation in the language of the guiding documents of this village since 1974. So that's 50 years that this has been the opinion of the residents of this village. And I don't expect that to change in the 4 years. I also don't expect, to be honest, people are going to want nice roads and fire suppression. I'm not worried that there's going to be some dramatic change in the winds in the next 4 years to where any one of these 3 things is less interesting than it was now. If anything, it's going to be more interesting, and we're going to wish we would have invested more earlier.
Yes, ma'am.
So on this number 4, the bond discussion items, it's 1,200,000. Who came up with that number?
They did.
Okay, so that's what you need. You don't need 2 million. You need the 1 million.
Their request, I defer to Melanie. She's the one who talked to the farmland people, the committee. It was 1.2 million.
That was the number I got.
Okay.
Okay, I've put forth a recommendation, a million, and 1.2.
Yeah, I just have one point, if I could. Councilor Murray indicated he'd rather go 2 years and 2 years. My feeling is I would prefer not to have to go back to the electorate every 2 years to vote on this. I think I'm leaning toward your position of maybe going for the 4 years and getting it settled.
Well, that's really not my position. That's what Brad Angst told us the other night when he was talking about bonds.
Yeah.
He suggested that was a way, and he could equilibrate the mill levy over that period of time. But we couldn't have another bond election for at least 4 years.
Right, right.
And the kicker in this is you have 4 years to sell it, and you have 3 years to spend it. So, it's just not like you got this pot of money, and I'm going to decide where I want to spend it. You'd be surprised. Well, you guys realize how long it takes to get things done and how fast time goes by. It doesn't seem to be, it just doesn't make sense.
So, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Mayor, that million that we have in reserve rights is just gonna sit there for another 4 years.
What million?
Well, you said we don't wanna, we gotta do the 4 years, and you don't wanna do 2. So then we'd have $1 million left over if we were looking at that 4 million.
No,
He's saying only 3.2.
I said 3.2.
We'd have $800,000 left over.
We don't need to do 4. We do $1 million, $1 million, and 1.2 million. That's 3.2 million. Why would we do 4 million? If we don't need it, why would we do it?
But we're not.
I think there's an answer to that.
I'm sorry, what'd you say, Zach?
Sorry, the answer as to why we would do 4 million is because when we voted on, and we've been at the most recent meeting, and then 2 years ago when we did our long-term bond planning, that planning was all based off of doing 2 to 2.5 million every 2 years. So 2 years from now, we're going to find ourselves in an interesting predicament to where if there is things that we want to bond, we're only going to have $800,000 to $1 million, which isn't enough to get a lot of projects done. Or we're going to find that people's property taxes are going to take a significant decrease, which I'm not opposed to. But then at some point in time, we're going to have to increase them if we go back to that plan, or leave them down lower. So we're potentially limiting our bonding capacity in the future by doing this. If we do 30% less than we should on a 4-year spend.
That's kind of where I was coming from. What are we gonna do that 800? It's gonna be.
So what is your suggestion?
Well, then we do the 4.
Okay, and how do you want to balance it out?
Do the 2, 2, 2. 2, 2, a 1, 1, 2.
So you want to do 1 for 3, 1 for storm drainage, and 2 for farmland preservation?
There you go.
Okay, Councilor Murray, what's your thoughts?
They're getting muddled.
Getting late, we need to hurry up. Let's go.
Yeah, that's
So
right.
I think
Go
we
ahead.
need to vote on whether we want to do a 2-year or a 4-year. That's the first thing we need to.
Okay, we can do that.
And then then we could say where the money needs to go.
Okay. Yes, sir.
Does that make sense?
I'll bet on you.
If we do a 2-year, then we're only gonna have $800,000.
No. Go ahead, Ron. Come on.
What Brad has said and what Jill has talked about is looking at 4.2 million, between 4 million and 4.5 million on what we can do over the next 2 years. What they do is they come to us and we go to them every, we look at our bonding capacities on a 2-year basis. And what they've given us is the ability to look at between 4.2 and 4.5 on a 2-year basis without raising the mill levy. The basis for everything that we think about going back, 4 or 5 years is holding the mill levy at the rate it's at, which is about 2.4. And, we can't control what Sandoval County does. And you as the governing body don't want to be responsible for a mill levy increase. So they're saying we can hold the mill levy steady and look at it again in 2 years. So it's my belief and understanding that we can look at 4.2 million and then analyze it again in 2 years.
2 years, yeah. Gotcha.
Okay. All right. You still want to make a
No,
motion that we
okay.
vote for 2 years or 4 years?
I think that makes sense, what you just said. I didn't realize that that Jill and the bond people were saying we could do this 2 years. So as
Well,
long
they
as
would
we do the
look at-
4.2, the 4 million, that's the issue, I think, as far as it's the money and how to, how it works out either 2 years or 4 years. If it's better for 4 years, but they're saying do it in 2 years, but you can still do 4.2 million in 2 years, right? That's what they were saying.
Yes.
My-
But, go ahead, John.
Just a question. I thought if the 4 million, I thought was in 2, so we could do it all at once, but it would be tranched for 2 million in 2 years and 2 million in the next 2 years, so that it's not like it's not like the 4 million is going to happen in one bond sale. It's 2 million in bond sale for whatever year, and then 2 years later, a 2 million in bond sale. Although we could authorize all 4 years at once, I think.
You have your election. And you get how much money you want. If you want to get 2 million, 2.5 million, 4 million. And then you have your sale. You sell your bonds when you're ready to use them. You have 4 years in which to sell them for what you want to use them on. And then you have 3 years after that to spend it.
And Brad thought if on the sale, we have 4 years, if we spaced out the sale at the 2-year intervals, 2 and 2 years, then we'd be able to maintain the mill rate.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's correct.
Yes, sir.
So, Mayor, thank you, Mayor, Counselor. So it would have really been helpful if Jill and Brad had been here because they could have answered all these questions for us, as we were asking. Is there any flexibility when we bring this up in the August 8th meeting that we can modify the bond issue? I mean, it depending on what their answers are.
We can modify it some, I'm sure.
We
but-
might be able to make a few minor adjustments to the
Well, I
language.
mean, like the value. I mean, if they say if it's 4 million for 4 years, okay. But if it's 4 million for 2 years, or do we have?
Well, they did say that we wouldn't be able to sell all the bonds right away, that we would have to wait to make
Yes.
sure that we're keeping, because as at the beginning of the item I typed up for you, Jill had said that if we over bond, it can put the village into some tax issues and some other problems. So yes, we could go for the 4 million,
Well,
but we would have to wait to sell them.
But we
basically,
need
so.
Jill and Brad to explain this really to us for the August 8th meeting. I mean, let's put it up and let's go for the 2 million on farm preservation. If we need to downgrade that a little bit, we can do that.
Okay, so the consensus is 1, 1, and 2.
Yes. I'll go for that.
Okay, and the question for Jill about the fee service.
Yeah, and I do
Okay.
think changing the amount would be a minor change on the wording, so we would still be able to change it and then get it to, as long as you made the motion to amend the,
Yeah, just the motion alone could put that in, right?
yeah.
Okay. Anything else from you two guys? John, Zach,
Yes, sir.
No, sir.
you okay? 2 million, all right? I can't see you're in the dark.
2 million in a bucket of
Yes,
ice.
that'd be great. Thank you.
What's that?
2 million in a bucket of ice.
Yeah. Okay,
Do we need to restate what Stuart said? Because I think that was a good idea to make sure that the ACE people know that they're getting their money from someplace else.
right now, there is no, the Friends of ACE is a private, nonprofit organization that hasn't been approved by the IRS at this point. So they're not really directly involved in anything, okay? They have come up with a plan that we have to finish and get a good design and then get the construction documents. So we will have to probably put together another group to sort of finish it off, so to speak.
Yeah.
Which, yeah.
So they know that they're not on the bond, so.
Well, we actually talked to John Schuman about this a little bit, and he was sort of excited about the idea of having shovel-ready plans that he could market with people. And so I think basically their committee is still together. We'll make sure they know about it.
But using the cash idea is even better than waiting for the bonds.
Yes, see, Ron can do it tomorrow.
Yeah.
Right.
You can do the cash, it's a motion that we make and.
If you can talk Raina into it.
Well, that's another story. Talking Ron into it, it could be a year.
Okay, so it looks to me like we have finished with number 7, since we have all come to a consensus on how we'd like to see the bond question, projects and amounts addressed. I have on here approval. I assume we have to give approval with a vote.
There's no vote, just consensus.
Okay, so we have a consensus. All right. We have a number of items listed on future agendas. If you guys come up with some other thoughts or ideas, you're more than welcome to email them to me. We're going to do a special work study with P&Z Commission, and that's going to be on the short-term rentals. Approval of ordinance adapting a new zone map. We hope we'll be able to do that, adopting a new zone map. We're going to have a discussion of speeding issues in the village on August 8th, discussion of meeting procedures on August 8th, changes to the committee's ordinance publish and post. Committee's ordinance, publish and post on 8/8. Then we'll have some discussion again on animal ordinance that we've talked about. And then changes to the short-term rental ordinance wording is recommended by P&Z, although we're going to have a special work study.
On that last one, Mr. Mayor?
Well, it looks like we're going to do a lot of work on short-term rentals.
Actually,
Yeah, I
the
was just-
special session with P and Z is more for running a
This
quasi,
was, Stuart brought this up some
Yeah.
time ago. Yes.
running a quasi judicial
Yes,
meeting.
no, I recall.
and- yeah.
Say again?
Running a quasi judicial meeting, and Randall Van Vleck will be here to answer questions about parliamentary procedure and all of that good stuff.
Okay. That's, okay, yes,
And
I
that-
recall now.
Yeah, and that meeting is at 6 on Thursday night.
6 on Thursday, the 27th.
Yes.
We'll be able to have that discussion. That was gonna be my question.
What discussion?
That changes to short-term rental. They'll bring that part up.
No, this one on the 27th.
It's separate.
The 27th is different.
Yeah, we're gonna stay away from that one.
Yeah, that'll come up at another time.
Whenever time.
Yeah.
Okay, that was
Okay.
my question.
All right, given that we finished the business meeting, I'm going to adjourn this meeting.
All right.
Thank you.
So, talk to the chief.